Welcome back to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. For more than a century, California functioned as the powerhouse of America's fuel and automotive ecosystem, supplying gasoline and diesel to millions of drivers, businesses, and military installations across the West. But over the last 5 years, that system has started to lose pressure. Refiners are pulling out, fuel prices are racing ahead of national averages, and the state's once-deep refining bench is thinning fast. Chevron's decision to move its headquarters to Texas wasn't just symbolic. It was a warning light flashing red. With closures accelerating and imports rising, California's fuel future now sits on shaky ground. Here are the developments, the risks, and the outcomes reshaping the state's fuel economy. Chevron's departure, a warning signal inside California's fuel system. Chevron didn't abandon California overnight. This was a slow loss of compression that built up over years. Founded in California in 1879, Chevron spent more than 140 years embedded in the state's industrial backbone. But by August 2024, the company announced it would relocate its headquarters from San Ramon to Houston, a move that sent shockwaves through both the energy sector and the automotive world that depends on it. CEO Mike Wirth was direct. California had become too expensive, too restrictive, and too unpredictable to operate in. Even with six-figure salaries, Chevron struggled to convince engineers and executives to stay, as housing shortages, cost of living pressures, and regulatory uncertainty piled up. At the time, Chevron already employed roughly 7,000 people in Houston compared to about 2,000 in California. And those remaining California jobs are now steadily migrating east. Selling its 92-acre San Ramon campus made the message unmistakable. The timing mattered too. The move came just weeks before new refinery profit margin rules passed. Chevron ran the numbers and walked away, not out of ideology, but economics. And once a company of Chevron's scale decided the math no longer worked, the pressure on the rest of California's refining system intensified almost immediately. The domino effect. Refinery shutdowns gain momentum. Once Chevron pulled its corporate anchor, the rest of California's refining landscape began to unravel. Within months, Phillips 66 announced plans to close its Wilmington refinery in Southern California by late 2025. That single facility produces about 139,000 barrels per day, roughly 8% of the state's gasoline supply. Then Valero delivered another major blow, confirming it would permanently shut down its Benicia refinery by April 2026, choosing a $1.1 billion write-down rather than operate under California's tightening regulations. That refinery alone processes around 145,000 barrels per day, erasing another 8.6% of in-state capacity. Combined, nearly 17% of California's refining output disappears in less than a year, an unprecedented contraction for a geographically isolated fuel market. Economists from USC, UC Davis, and Stanford warn the price impact could be severe. Projections point to immediate jumps of 40 cents per gallon after Phillips 66 closes, followed by another 80 cents once Valero exits. Under stress scenarios, fires, shipping delays, or global crude disruptions, $8 to $10 gasoline becomes a real possibility. But refinery closures alone don't explain why California's situation is uniquely dangerous. The state's isolation makes every loss far more painful. Quick pit stop here. If you're getting value from this breakdown and want more clear, data-driven automotive and energy analysis, hit subscribe to Piston Pundit. It helps the channel grow and keeps you plugged in for upcoming vehicle updates and industry shifts. All right, back to it. An energy island, imports, isolation, and the CARB constraint. California's fuel crisis isn't just about refinery closures. It's about isolation. The state mandates a unique gasoline blend known as CARB fuel, designed to reduce emissions but incompatible with most U.S. supply. More than 90% of CARB gasoline is produced inside California, meaning when refineries shut down, replacement fuel can't simply be trucked in from Texas or Arizona. There are no pipelines crossing the Rocky Mountains, the Jones Act restricts domestic shipping, and the U.S. tanker fleet offers little flexibility. As a result, California is leaning heavily on overseas imports. In May 2025, the state imported a record 210,000 barrels per day of gasoline, primarily from India, South Korea, and Singapore. Only a handful of refineries worldwide can produce CARB-compliant fuel, and shipments take 4 to 6 weeks to arrive. If supply drops below the 15-day threshold identified by the California Energy Commission, prices spike violently. This isn't redundancy, it's exposure. California's policies are effectively pushing fuel production offshore, exporting emissions while raising costs at home. And when exposure turns into higher prices, everyday Californians feel it first and hardest. Economic shockwaves: how higher fuel costs hit daily life. The consequences of California's fuel crunch don't stop at the gas pump. They cascade straight through household budgets and business balance sheets. At $8 a gallon, filling a typical 20-gallon tank becomes a $160 hit. For commuters logging 40 to 50 miles a day, monthly fuel expenses can easily blow past $500 before insurance, maintenance, or loan payments even enter the equation. For contractors, delivery drivers, landscapers, and tradespeople, fuel isn't just overhead, it's the lifeblood of their operation. Many small businesses are already modeling price hikes or service cuts just to stay afloat. When trucks cost more to run, everything they carry costs more too. Groceries, medicine, and construction materials all feel the squeeze. Diesel prices amplify the pain, especially in California's agriculture sector, where planting, harvesting, and shipping depend almost entirely on diesel-powered equipment. But the ripple effects don't stop with households and small businesses. They extend into sectors critical to national operations. Beyond cars, fuel shortages impact aviation, farming, and defense. One of the most overlooked angles in California's refinery retreat is how deeply it affects sectors far beyond personal transportation. Refineries don't just produce gasoline. They're critical sources of diesel, jet fuel, and specialized fuels that keep aviation, agriculture, and national defense running. California hosts major military installations like Travis Air Force Base, Camp Pendleton, and Naval Base San Diego, all of which rely heavily on steady local jet fuel supplies. In fact, California leads the nation in jet fuel demand. As refinery capacity disappears, the military increasingly competes with civilian markets for imported fuel, a risky setup during emergencies or geopolitical disruptions. Commercial aviation faces similar pressure, with airlines already modeling supply constraints and operational limits. Agriculture faces a cruel irony. The nation's largest food-producing state may struggle to afford the fuel required to harvest and transport its crops. Which brings us directly to the bigger picture and the unavoidable conclusion. Verdict: Chevron read the gauges early, and California is paying the price. Chevron didn't pull out of California on a whim, it followed the numbers. Between tightening regulations, shrinking refinery capacity, and geographic isolation, the state's fuel system has become fragile at the exact moment millions of drivers, businesses, and institutions still depend on internal combustion engines. This is what happens when supply retreats faster than demand, a textbook recipe for volatility. This isn't a rejection of clean energy or innovation. It's a warning about timing, balance, and unintended consequences. When refineries close faster than alternatives scale up, prices spike, imports rise, and exposure grows. Chevron exited early. Phillips 66 and Valero are following. California now faces a hard choice: recalibrate policy to stabilize supply, or accept a future defined by higher prices and external dependence. Before we wrap up, we want to hear from you. What does this mean for drivers still relying on ICE vehicles? Can California realistically manage a smooth transition without affordable fuel in the meantime? And should other states see this as a warning sign? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe to Piston Pundit for upcoming vehicle updates and industry insights. Thanks for watching and see you next time. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.